Hello and welcome to another pattern recognition video. And if you're not familiar with chess pattern recognition, basically you want to solve a set of puzzles and you solve them more than once. That way you don't completely forget them. So you do a series of puzzles, the first time nice and slow, then you go over them faster each time, and you go over them multiple times to help remember those patterns that'll be important in your own games. All right, let's begin here. I'll do at least 10 puzzles. Pause at any time if you need more time to think. Okay, in this problem here, what is going on? Well, if we count up the material right away, we can see that we're behind by what, 3 pawns and a bishop. The queen is pinning this rook to our king. So it does not look good for black. So you're going to know, well, basically these problems are mate in 2. So knowing that, that's a big hint. You know, it's not like a normal game where you're not sure what moves to make. So these are rated 1500 to 2000. So even for lower rated players, you should be able to find these. What do? Well, you look for checks first because they are the most forcing. And what checks do we have? Well, we can't move this rook as it's pinned, so that only leaves the queen. And where can we go? Along this diagonal or this diagonal? And all of these moves are checks, but of course, here or here, the king could just capture us. So, what is better, here or here to move the queen? Take a look at those, see if you can figure it out. And if you're ready, here we go. Well, if we go this way, the king can escape here, and we would what? Have to go back to where we were and chase that king back and forth. But if we go this way, the king can only go here, and then we swing over, and you'll see a great little pattern here where we'll deliver a mate. All right, so check, and the king will have to go here, and then we swing the queen over here, delivering a mate. And this is an important pattern. Once the king is here and the queen is here, the queen will cover these squares along this side, the squares here along that side, along with the rook, of course. The queen is protected, and the diagonal through the middle. So the only thing that won't be covered are these 2 squares on the opposite sides, which are blocked by white's own pawns. All right, that was rated 1643. On to puzzle number 2. We just had a bishop under attack, and that bishop moves to e3. So here it looks like we have 5 pawns. Our opponent has 6, so we're down a pawn. They have the bishop pair. You know, we're looking for a mate in 2, so we want to look at checks first. So what checks do we have? Well, the rook check. We even have a bishop check here. Which one is better? Here or here? Okay. Well, if we deliver the bishop check, you know, if the bishop blocks, remember when a king is in check, there are 3 options: capture the attacker, block the attacker, or run. Now, if the bishop were to block after we check with our bishop, well, then we could move here. But if we go here and the king runs towards the center, then what do? Well, I guess we could check and then move here, but this is supposed to be a mate in 2. So what do? So if we go here, check, the king goes there. Like I said, we could go here, but that's Okay, that would be a mate in 2. I forgot the bishop is covering that square. All right, so check and mate by the knight. So interesting pattern there where these 3 pieces are working together. And that brings me to the point that on average, it takes about 3 pieces, give or take, to deliver a checkmate, more or less depending on what the defenses are that your opponent is putting up. So here we go. On to puzzle number 3. What is happening here? The bishop moves up to block the path of the queen, which would lead to a mate. But what other moves do we have? And the bishop is attacking our rook. So it looks like, pause if you need to look longer, but hopefully you found this one. If we look at checks first, well, you can see that we can go here. The king can only move over because of this coverage by the queen of all these squares, and it's backed up by the rook. And then we can just swing over and deliver a mate with the queen here. So check and mate. Very dangerous having 2 rooks or rook and queen on the 2nd rank here, or 7th rank for you, 2nd rank for the opponent. All right, on to puzzle number 4. Pawn is just pushed forward. The king is greatly reduced. Well, it's in a stalemate position. This king can't go anywhere because of the rook, the pawn, this pawn. So what do we do? How do we deliver a mate here? Okay, well, if we look at checks first, go ahead and take a look at this problem. Hopefully you can figure it out. If you're ready, here we go. Well, the only check we have is this rook check. So if we go there, remember, 3 options when the king is under attack. Capture the attacker, block, or run. You can't block when the pieces are side by side once the rook goes here. So that leaves what? Capture the attacker or run. And we already said the king's in a stalemated position and can't run. So once the rook moves up here, the pawn will capture. And then what? We deliver the mate with the other rook. So check and mate. Interesting pattern there where all these pawns, well, these 2 pawns really block that king from being able to escape. And then we have our own pawn covering these squares, well, both of these pawns, and the king also covering that. So, if we look at this, it took, 5 pieces with the king and the pawns included to checkmate against that king. But the king had 3 pawns for coverage there. All right, on to puzzle number 5. What was that? Did they just capture something there? Was that a rook capture? Or I didn't catch that. All right. So what do we have here? All right. It looks like, if we look at checks first, what do we have? The bishop check, but the king can run. Rook check, but once again, the king can run here. So perhaps we need to cut off the opponent's ability to escape by moving here. We cut that off, and then on the next move, we can go there and deliver the mate. See if that does it. Yes. All right. So I hope you did well so far. We completed 5 puzzles. On to puzzle number 6. Queen is just captured here. Captured the knight, also attacking our queen. But no matter. We have a rook on the 7th rank. Our queen is ready to jump into the action here by going here with check, forcing the king into the corner. And we don't want to capture here to deliver the mate, or this pawn will grab our queen. So we need to grab the rook for the back rank mate. So check and mate on the back rank. All right, on to puzzle number 7. What do we have here? The king steps forward. It was being checked by our rook. So now, how do we deliver a move for a winning attack here? Take a look at these pieces. We want to always look at the checks first, because those are so forcing, the opponent has to deal with those by capturing the attacker, blocking, or running. So what checks do we have? Well, this rook can move here or here and deliver a check. Of course, here the king could just capture, so that doesn't look good. And, if we go here, and you want to make sure that you're not just checking because you can. You want to check that you have a good follow-up once you make that checking move. That way you don't just waste a check, because sometimes the threat of a check hanging over your opponent's head for multiple moves can contribute to them making a mistake, because they're always worrying about that check. So, if we move the rook here, the king can what? Start running towards the center, perhaps, and try and escape. So, all the checks that we have. Rook check. The knight could jump up here and check, but then the king could run. So, don't forget about pawn moves. A lot of people overlook these. If we push this pawn up, delivering a check, we already have the knight and the rook doing a good job of creating a mating net, where that king is kind of trapped and can't run. So once we check, the only move the king can make is to go here, and then it looks like our rook can deliver the winning mating move. So now we can go here, and great little pattern here where we have the rook attacking, we have a pawn sitting here, but it's protected by the other pawn, and the knight is also preventing that king from running as well. All right, on to puzzle number 8. What do we have here? Okay. All right, well, we notice right away that we have a rook lining up on the H file, preventing the king from stepping over there. This is important as well. We have a bishop aimed at the king, pinning this pawn to the king. So, that's a hint right there that we definitely want to take a look at, potentially, because our queen is lined up. Maybe our queen takes that pawn, checking the king, and there's only, 2 moves available. Blocking with the bishop or running over here. And either way, that should be winning. So capture, and now because of that bishop, we can just deliver the mate. All right, on to puzzle number 9. Okay, what do we have here? Bishop is just developed with an attack on the knight, but we do have a queen lined up on the king, so there's a potential for a discovered check or even a discovered double check. So if we move our knight here or here, we're checking with the king, checking the king with the queen and the knight at the same time. And so the rules don't apply for a double check like this as far as capture, block, or run, because you can't capture or block 2 checking pieces at the same time. The only thing the king can do is run. So we have to figure out what is best and which move would work the best. Well, if we go here, the king could maybe run here attacking the knight. So maybe we go here. And that prevents the king from trying to come forward. The king would only be able to go here. And then it looks like we could move up there for the mate. So check and mate. So, outstanding little pattern there with a double discovered check leading to a checkmate. Okay, on to puzzle number 10. We just had a capture here trying to open things up on our king, which, as I mentioned, it usually takes 3 attackers on average to checkmate a king. We already have 2 attackers here. We did have 2 defenders. If we take that bishop, the queen could recapture and start chasing our king around. So we need to look for a mate. All right. Well, we want to look at checks first. So what is best? If we go here, the knight would just capture. So we need to remove this defender. And luckily, we have a knight here that can capture, delivering a check at the same time. So if that knight is captured, well, then we checkmate. If the king runs to here, then we still checkmate. So check and mate. We just remove the defender. Great little tactical pattern to remember. If you can't get in there at the king because of his defenses, well, try and find ways to mow down those defenses, knock them down and break through. All right. Well, we completed 10 puzzles there. I think I'll end it there. Hopefully, you did well on these puzzles. Remember, work on your pattern recognition, solve a set of puzzles nice and slow. It can be 5 or 10, 20, 100 or more, but go through nice and slow. Then the next time, maybe cut your time in half, and each time through, try and solve the puzzles faster. And if you do that about 7 times, by the end of that, by the time you go through the 5th, 6th, and 7th time through a bunch of puzzles, you'll be able to just zip through them a lot faster because you'll start remembering a lot more. And hopefully you'll remember those patterns in your own games and be able to use those to win. All right. Well, feel free to leave comments as always. I always enjoy hearing from viewers and subscribers. If you have any kind of requests for future videos, what you would like to see, leave a comment for that. Also, like and subscribe to support the channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching and have a super chess day.